Qué maravilla, teniente, dijo. Esto debe parecerle un sueño. Welcome, one and all, to another round of the book reviews. And today I have for you Gabriel García Márquez in Evil Hour, or in Spanish, La Mala Hora. And I actually read this book in Spanish. So my purpose for reading this was I'm still trying to perfect my Spanish, and I enjoy reading these books. I read this one out loud, so actually had a bit of a different feel to it, reading something out loud versus actually just reading it in your own head. So there's more to follow of books like this from the Latin American boom period. So this is something a little bit more cultured, I would say, than perhaps some of the other books I've been doing. And I'll dive right into the synopsis. So this was published in 1962, and it's one of the first works of Gabriel García Márquez, the very famous Colombian author of Cien Años de Soledad, 100 Years of Solitude. And it's set in the town very similar to his universe, but this book isn't magic realism like 100 Years of Solitude was. So it's more, there's none of those crazy things happening. It's more of a real life situation, but with touches of the style of García Márquez. And it's basically about a town ruled by a mayor who's also the lieutenant of the town, lieutenant of the garrison. So it's sort of a mixture between those two. And it's, I suppose, a story of oppression, repression, whichever one of those words you want to use. So it describes that feeling, that fear that can occur when you are in a state where it has been locked down, where there is political oppression and whatnot, which it was, I guess, very prominent in Garcia Marquez's life, and so he's translated that into a lot of his books. So it mostly follows the interactions of the mayor, as well as with the priest Angel, as well as the judge Arcadio, and it pretty much just goes through. It's a relatively short book, 200 and something pages, I believe. So won't take that. 197 in Spanish, and that means it's probably about 160 in English if you choose to read it like that. So what are the themes of the book? Well, la violencia, so the violence, the political battle of Colombia. And this book starts and ends with a death. And I suppose that's just showing a sign of what is to come. So it seems like there's almost like a strange attraction to violence that happens with humans and whatnot, which can actually trigger all the other associated fears. So in the book, one of the first deaths that occurs, that is when there had been a long time with no killings. And now this was actually a death unrelated to political repression or whatnot, but it triggered what would then become an ever-increasing amount of, I guess you'd call it totalitarianism of the mayor, of the lieutenant of the town, as he increasingly starts to put in, restrictions on people, locking people up, putting in the toque de quedas. I actually forget what that is called in English, and like the nightly patrols and things like that to actually stop saying, you're not allowed to go out past this time. So the other one is Los Pasquines. So Los Pasquines are, I suppose, like an element of the darker side of human nature. So the Pasquines are when they're basically posters that are put up over the town saying they're the unofficial gossip of the town. So everyone knows these sort of things. So it's saying, this lady here slept with this widow over here. This guy has been, and these children aren't related to this guy. This guy actually is, doing drug dealing or whatever behind the scenes. And it's I guess the unofficial version of what everyone knows. And this is like, it's sort of got me thinking that, gossip and rumor are a mixed blessing. Gossip and rumor are actually really helpful in certain cases where you perhaps are new to a place and you don't know that, that side of town is bad, or, that person, he's actually had some shading dealings. He's, there's some rumors floating around that he actually used to beat his wife and stuff. That's sort of information that you do want to know, but it can lead into dangerous areas where, in these cases, it's now instigating things. So this instigated the murder of the, his name was Pastor at the start of the novel, because one of the guys read it, and then just went, you know what, I'm going to kill this motherfucker. He slept with my wife, whatever, goes on and on. The escalating of violence. So, it's sort of like, what is the effect of physically inscribing something as well? So there does seem to be something, and you'll read this in lots of places, self-help books or other places like that, where they say, journal, write things down, write your goals down, actually write them on paper, because there is something, transformational, transcending about actually writing something down on paper. I know for me personally, when I used to study at university, if I read something, it would go out of my mind. But if I wrote that exact same thing down, that would stick in my mind, and I'd be able to remember that for the tests and whatnot. So, why is that so powerful? I don't know. The human brain is a very fascinating thing. And it's almost like other ethical considerations as well that, you should be taking into account if you're putting things out and writing stuff down. Maybe that's something I should be thinking more of with, the posting on Instagram, for example, or the writing on YouTube. These things that are going to last. Maybe they're not as visible as if I, posted posters up on the actual street corner, but there maybe is, something that we all should be thinking about when we're actually writing things down, because it is a more powerful medium. Words can come and go almost, but when it's written down, that's sort of like concrete. It's there for reals. So my personal observations from the book, if you find a unique style, quadruple down on it. There's a reason why Gabriel García Márquez is one of the greats, and that's because he's captured an essence of his style. And even though this is one of his first books, and I'll talk a little bit about why I didn't find it as great as some of his others, which I've read, that you can still sort of see that essence of him in the book, the way he writes, some of the the small little things, the pithy one word observations. There's a bit when they're talking about who's actually putting up the Pasquines, and someone says es todo el pueblo y no es nadie. So it's it's everyone and it's no one. Just small sentences like that, really captures what the author is about and their unique style. So it's real interesting just seeing those sorts of things. And I actually like that while reading through a series of books, which now that I'm getting older, I'm actually managing to do more of. So I've read all of George Orwell's works, all of Sam Harris's, and a fair chunk of Mark Twain and people like that. And you do actually get to see their evolution and their style grow. I also think climate is maybe more important than we think. I was trying to actually have a think, and when I mean climate, I mean the actual weather that's outside. I think that dictates a lot of how human beings behave. So I was trying to think, what marks this book out? Well, it's almost the fiery passion of the Latino spirit in essence. And why is that? Well, potentially because if you go to Colombia or in places like that, the weather is very hot, but it's moist and dry, and it's got this vibrancy about it. The fruits that you can find in this place, it's almost an expression of the people as themselves. This same book written about somewhere like Sweden is really hard to imagine, because in the book he's also talking about how he's very vivid with the climate, how things come and go, how that actually the passionate nature of the climate also sort of seems very similar to the passionate nature of the people in the book, which is set in Colombia as well. So that actually just got me thinking, that actually could sort of explain why there might be a stereotype of Russians being cold to the point and sort of unfeeling, unemotional. That sort of reflects what their weather is like. Australians are more outgoing and breezy, and everything's kind of casual and easy because that's what our weather is like. So yeah, just something interesting that got me thinking about. So in summary, it's one of the first works of Gabriel García Márquez, and for me, not his finest. It captures that environmental feeling, but the story and characters for me lacked a little bit of bite. I felt like it needed a driving character, as the main character was sort of responding to everything and not instigating stuff. So it's funny in the book, everyone is sort of against the mayor because he's starting to put these oppression, the political things on people, starting to take away liberties and whatnot. But for me, it sort of felt like he was responding to a lot of things that were happening. He didn't cause the first death. He's not the one going out and putting out the posters on, yet he's having to respond to all of these things. And so it sort of felt like the story just meandered on a little bit. It didn't actually have a real driving purpose, which is okay, because if you look at 100 Years of Solitude, that doesn't really have a purpose. It's just like one long meandering. But that's sort of the point of that work. It's so long, it's so meandering that you get caught up in the solitude, the loneliness, the losing yourself while reading about it. Whereas this book is a lot shorter and it doesn't capture that same feeling. So overall, I'm giving In Evil Hour, La Mala Hora by Gabriel García Márquez a 5 out of 10. It's okay. It's an okay read. I'm glad I did it just to see what his first works are like, but there are better works from him which I would recommend, such as Love in the Time of Cholera, The Colonel Has No One to Write To, and of course 100 Years of Solitude. So what's something pragmatic I'm going to take from this book? Nothing from the actual book itself, more my reading process of it. So this book was written in Spanish and I pretty much understood everything. Every now and then I'd have to look up a word, but for the most part I could get through it. My comprehension was probably in the 99 point something %, and it felt really good. It felt really good doing that. So I'm going to keep reading out loud the Spanish books. I'm finding it's really helping my own Spanish practice, and it gives more of a flavor to the reading as well. I found myself getting more invested in the characters and the situations than I would if I just read it in my head, because when I read it in my head, it's more of a monotone. But when I read it out loud, I'm actually following the sentences more. I'm actually, using the grammar, the punctuation points, the exclamation points as they should be used. Whereas in my head, I might kind of keep it at like a neutral monotone. So I felt that added to the story a little bit. But, the story itself for me just lacked some things. So that's it for today. Have you read any works by any Colombian authors by Gabriel García Márquez? What do you think of the Latin American boom period, magic realism, that whole essence of what is Colombia? Does the weather affect people? All interesting questions. If you're listening on YouTube and reply to this, I'll get back to you. And if you can leave a comment, a like, any show of support is much appreciated. That's it for today. Karen out.